Sorry for the delay, everybody. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of this video, well, let's first talk about, hey, what defines a short video game, and why am I even asking in the first place what happened to short video games? So, in my opinion, with no scientific backing, because I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not a scientist at all, but I play one on TV. So, with no scientific backing, just my opinion, I think that a short video game is a single player experience between the hours of 4 and 20 hours to beat, with a nice sweet spot of a 12 to 14 hour experience, right? A nice 12 to 14 hour game doesn't take too much effort to play within one sitting or even just a weekend. And for me, I think that's a good amount of experience, a 12 to 14 hour experience with a single player game. As someone who is in his 30s, working full time, and also doing other creative ventures like music production, which I'm also writing all of the background music for this video. So I hope that's going well for future Adam. I'm sure it's going great. It's not causing me any kind of stress at all, whilst I also write a full-length album and 2 EPs. I'm sure he's doing just fine. So why am I asking what happened to short video games in the first place? Well, I think there's actually two main factors that are going into the games industry that's causing, shorter single-player games to kind of go the wayside. The two are being convenience factors for gamers and also the monetary value that we put as gamers and the industry puts on video games. So in the first chapter that we're going to talk about, I want to talk about that first factor that I talked about. Why am I saying talked about a lot? It just, you're watching this video anyway. But I want to talk about that first factor of convenience. Why are gamers picking convenience over anything else? Well, I got some numbers and I don't know, let's talk about that. Start chapter 1. So to actually no one's surprise ever, if you ever watched a news report about video games or have just picked up a controller in general as a gamer, there is a number one spot for game genre that most gamers agree upon, which, let's say it together now with 3, 2, 1. Shooters! Whoa, I know, shocking news. But in a study done in Q3 of 2022, it was actually found that both Gen Z and millennials have agreed in, gaming news genre, whatever. It was actually agreed upon that the number one spot for video games has been shooters, like I said, in both Gen Z and millennials. It was also found that Gen X likes puzzle games. So, there you go, Gen X. Anybody else remember Gen X? What a kooky generation, Gen X. We forgot you were a generation, so we just went from boomer to millennial, and there you are, Gen X. Still kicking along with your puzzle games, but that's either here nor there. I'm not here for a generation war. Or am I? But within this study, it was actually found that the most played game between Gen Z and millennials was, again, no surprise to anybody, is actually Call of Duty, with Fortnite being in that same mix of games that are being played most often. And in another study by the same people who've done the other studies, I'll put, Liz will do the editing. She'll put up graphs and I'll link the description. I'll put the studies in the description. You've watched the YouTube video before. But in that same study, they actually found that what's the reason that you're playing video games between Gen Z, millennials, Gen X? They're not playing games mostly for the storylines. They're not even playing it for to compete online or anything like that. Those are actually the low parts of the statistics. But the number one statistic for why you're playing a game, with almost 90% of the people answering to this question, was to relax, chill, pass some time. It's not even to be competitive with a shooter like Call of Duty or to get more battle pass points with Fortnite. Who plays Fortnite a lot? Not me. I don't waste my days with Fortnite. Listen, millennials play Fortnite too. I'm sorry to tell you. But for the most part, and I can agree to this, yes, I do admit that I do play Fortnite, and most of it is not even to be the best Fortnite player. It's just to kind of pass the time. You know, I got some time to kill, and why don't I put on like a couple matches of Fortnite, and it's perfect for that. But that's what the study found out, that we're going mostly to shooter games, and for the most part, the reason why we're going to video games in the first place is to pass the time. It's also important to note of where we want to play video games. In a recent study done by Forbes, it's actually found that most consoles that people are playing on is actually not really a console, it's a mobile device with, console and PC still in that running, but most of the time you're playing the most hours on your phone. And in another recent study, it's actually found that more gamers actually want to play free games rather than pay for a game. It goes into the monetary value, which we will get to, I promise you. But more gamers want to play a free mobile game to pass the time. So it kind of matches up with the research there that in the convenience standpoint, most gamers just want to pass the time on their mobile device. They're not really wanting to turn on the console. They don't really want to turn on their PCs to play a game. They're there for the convenience of a downloadable mobile game that is a shooter and just to pass the time. So when talking about what's happening to short video games, we also need to put that factor into the mix, that we're just doing it to pass the time. We're just doing it so that, I got an hour to kill, might as well just pull out my phone. With a short story video game, we're not really playing for the storylines. We're mostly playing for the convenience factor of video games. So to turn on your console and play another chapter of another story game that you don't really know how long that chapter is, but you know how long a match is in certain video games. So when we're talking about what do you want in a video game, most of the studies point to that most of the gamers out there today want a free mobile shooter game like Call of Duty just to pass the time, for that convenience factor. So when you're asking the average gamer to turn on a video game, buy, not for free, but buy a short story game that's not on your mobile device, it kind of goes against the leeway for that. And what's even crazier is that before I shot this video, when I found out like the research is pointing to a free mobile shooter that's on your phone, I got an ad from Ubisoft saying that they're making a new free shooter game, but it's not on mobile. So it's, once again, Ubisoft missing the mark again. So surprise on that point. But that's to say that the studies are pointing to convenience over satisfactory storylines. So what's happening to shorter games? In this factor, what's happening to them is that convenience is taking over storylines. And that's where it's at. Also, I said in the introduction that there are actually two main factors going on with what's going on with story games. One is convenience, and we talked about that. But the other one is the monetary value that games have nowadays, both with gamers, but mostly with the games industry. So what's happening with the money in video games? Let's talk about that in chapter 2. So as we talk about video game earnings with the marketing companies and how the marketing industry is growing for games, well, let's actually go over to my macrame charts. Come on over. So as we see here on my macrame chart, listen, I know I'm a millennial wearing skateboarding clothes, houseplants, drinking kombucha, and I have a macrame that I found in a thrift store. I'm not basic. You're basic. But moving on. So we can always just blame the developers and the people who are buying these video games, of course, with the white whales of all the free-to-play games. But what we really need to talk about here is The marketing department. What a magical place, like Willy Wonka's factory. The marketing department. Because here's the thing about marketing departments. It's what's the phrase I need? It's their job to be marketing to you and setting trends that they see within the games industry. It's actually what they do for a living. And so it's not really their fault when I say, hey, let's look at marketing, because they're the bad guys in the whole thing. I don't really want to project them to be the bad guys with what's happening in the games industry, with the trends that we're seeing, because again, it's what they should be doing. It's what games companies pay them to do, and it's where the money is going to. It is the marketing department's sole responsibility to make you, the video game player, yes, you, both Gen Z and Millennial, and Gen X, if you want to put them in the mix, I guess. But it's their sole responsibility to tell you, the gamer, that the company's free-to-play mobile shooter, that ecosystem that you should be putting money into, that is the only video game to be playing. It's what your friends are playing. It's what the cool kids are playing, because that's marketing. That's just what it is. So it's not what they are doing. It's anything bad. It's just, it is what it is. That's their job. There's actually a lot of money on the line for marketing departments to keep on doing what they're doing, because from 2019 to 2022, game companies have actually put $3.1 billion into game marketing in 2019, all the way shooting up to $5.8 billion in 2022. That was just last year. So with that increase, right, why are they doing that? I don't understand. Why are we putting more into marketing? Well, it's actually because they want those game companies to keep on getting players into those ecosystems where they can keep putting advertisements into their free mobile games. You're paying for it in some way, even if you don't get the gems or the decks or V-Bucks, whatever you want to. I don't know. I'm just a 32-year-old man. So to keep on putting those ads into video games, there is actually a 5-year projection that they can actually get a revenue of $8.7 billion. Wow. Just from putting ads into video games. So that kind of explains of why there's a huge increase in, hey, put all this money into marketing, because we're projected in the next 5 years to be making $8.7 billion just from ad revenue in video games. Wonder why that we're being put under the limelight of like, hey, you're going to be playing our free mobile shooter game. I wonder why. So with those kind of projections, they're telling their marketing companies to keep that train chugga-chugging, because that train will not stop moving until it reaches $50 billion in game revenue. I'm assuming. I don't know. I'm not an engineer or whatever you want to call me. But even more of a crazy statistic, as we said in Chapter 1, where most people are playing their games on mobile devices, it's actually found that 60% of gamers will play their games on their mobile device. That be it with Call of Duty Warzone or Fortnite on mobile or even Pokemon Go. I'm not here to list like or shame you for playing a game on mobile. It's just, it is what it is. 60% of gamers are playing games on their mobile devices. What's even crazier is that according to information gathered by the Nielsen company, it was actually found that free-to-play mobile games took 80% of all digital sales of video games just back in 2018. The year is now 2023.
It's getting higher every single time.
But in Nielsen company found that in 2018, 80% of the sales were made digitally, by the way, by free-to-play mobile games. So you really can't ask,
hey, why are marketers just marketing these types of games? Why aren't they marketing shorter story games? Why aren't they marketing my kind of game?
Well, unfortunately, it's just because that your type of game isn't really making these kinds of revenues. It's a crazy amount of money put into a crazy kind of game scheme. So when we talk about the two factors of what's happening to short story video games, well, we took into convenience factor, that being, oh, I just want to flip out my phone and just kill some time. And we talk into the value that game marketers have put them in, is that most gamers are going towards these free-to-play, easy-to-play, casual, spend a couple bucks here and there until it takes up 80% of the revenue of digital sales. So with that, when I'm asking you what's happening to short story video games, look at these two factors. That's what's happening to them. But does that mean that short story video games are dead by the wayside? No one's going to play them anymore. Just go to Fortnite or whatever. Does this mean the end for short story games? Well, no, actually, it's not the end for them. In fact, they're stronger than ever. Let's move on to chapter 3. Hey Floki, who do you think's to blame for all this game marketing stuff? Very cool. So here's a flat reality, is that marketing dollars need to be thrown into, or invested into if you want to be all fancy dancy with it, but they need to be invested into the demographic that's giving them this money to be marketing to. It's just that cycle that they have to go through. Whether or not we agree with it, it's just, it is what it is. The white whales, or whatever you want to do, throw the money at them. They have more capital to get more marketing, so that marketing needs to be thrown into that same demographic to keep that train rolling and to keep that snowball growing. I guess you can say that. But that's the flat reality, is that we're being marketed to free-to-play shooter games that just pass the time. The statistics are there. But I said in chapter 1 that yes, those studies have found that the number one most played genre between Gen Z and millennials are indeed shooter games. That is just the number one genre. But in that same study, we find that the number 2 most played games with Gen Z and millennials is actually action adventure games. You know, those types of games that are usually single player experiences hitting between that sweet spot of 12 to about 20-25 hours. And I think that kind of hits the mark with what a short story game is that the action adventure games like God of War, whether you think that's short or not, that's neither here nor there. You're not a scientist like me, but like that's maybe not necessarily Red Dead Redemption 2 because that takes 60 hours, but first and foremost is that action adventure games usually are, if they're not like RPG level. I'm trailing off here. Here we go, back in the video, but action adventure games take the number 2 spot with all game genres, with Gen Z and millennials. It is the number 2 spot. And when I'm saying that in a way of like there's hope for short story games. Because yes, action adventure games aren't that short with 4 hours of just gameplay like Oxenfree was, which I love Oxenfree. 4 hours, beat it in a weekend. 8 hours if you do the, continued timeline, but that's, that tip. You go play Oxenfree. But with these studies, action adventure games still have a strong demographic with gamers, both Gen Z and millennials, and even Gen X. They can come in this club too, but that's also a very good genre with them. So why aren't we being marketed more action adventure games? Well, we are being marketed to, like with action adventure games, it is still happening, just not as much as free-to-play mobile shooter games. It's just not even by like a little bit of money. It is a landslide of how much money the number 1 genre is. Just look up the statistics yourself. Look up the studies. It's not even by a little. It's a landslide of how much money those games are making versus action adventure games. Because usually, and again, I'm going on just my opinion here, but usually you just play the game and you put it back down. There is no ecosystem. There is no more money to be made unless there's DLCs involved. But once it's done, it's done. You paid for it. You're good to go. And that's it. Whereas free-to-play mobile, it's always going. It's always churning out money. You just have to make the one version of it and boom, you're in the ecosystem. You're still paying them money. But that's where it is with advertisements, with small microtransactions. But that's why the marketing money is going towards those games and not necessarily the action adventure games that we are still seeking. So when I ask what's happening to shorter video games, nothing has happened to them. It's just that they're buried under all the advertisements that we're getting from free-to-play mobile titles. It just is. So there's still a desire for action-adventure games. Like I said before, also in Chapter 1, where I said that what are the reasons that gamers want a game? Yes, it says low statistic on storylines. But just because it's a low statistic doesn't mean that statistic doesn't exist. People still want storyline games. People still want an adventure game. People still want to be engrossed with story. But most of the time they just want to relax. And that's where easy modes come into action adventure games. Yes, you're still a gamer even if you play on easy mode, like your boy does. I don't have time for hard modes. I'm 32, dog. But there's still a desire. Whether or not the stats match up to say, hey, we gotta put all the marketing into this, the desire is still there as the number 2 most played genre. Still statistics saying we want storylines. And I'm sure as you clicked on this video, you too want another short video game. There's still a market for this. It's just not as strong as the number 1 spot. So in this final chapter, and I'm asking who's really to blame for shorter video games going on the wayside? Sure, we could blame the lemmings who are just following the gaming trends of game marketers and just putting in the money for there. We could also blame the game marketers themselves and the game companies for constantly trying to put trends on ecosystems. We could put on the blame there. Or, and here's the unfortunate truth, we have to put in the work ourselves because we have to find those games for ourselves. Because unfortunately, marketing dollars don't really go to action adventure games. They really don't go into shorter indie games for sure. I remember on a podcast I was listening to that a game marketer for a smaller indie game said they have the marketing dollars of a peanut M&M. So they have no marketing dollars. But that goes into why you're not finding these games anymore, is because they don't have the marketing value to put that game in front of you. Not like the big dogs do. So we actually have to put in the work and find these games for ourselves, whether it be listening to gaming podcasts that we really respect and go on to storyline games, such as my friend Dan does a podcast called The Greatest Story Ever Played Podcast. Go check that out. He's got a lot of video games on that. You can even check out your favorite gaming YouTubers for recommendations of what to play. I made 2 videos of what to play and y'all didn't watch them. My feelings aren't hurt. Your feelings are hurt. Go sit down. But you can also look at your favorite gaming YouTubers, the same kind of game genres that they play. And of course, you can just search onto the store yourselves. Because unfortunately, when answering the question, what happened to shorter video games? Well, they didn't go away. Nothing's gone away. It's just that the market value for higher shooter games has gone way super high, that now shorter story games are buried. There's still a desire, they're still being made, there's still market to them. I mean, I still like the Callisto Protocol, but it didn't do commercially high because, again, it wasn't marketed enough, I'm guessing. And 2, well, reviews weren't that great. So I liked it. I liked the Callisto Protocol, but that's just me. So I wouldn't say what's happening to shorter video games. Are they done? They're not done. We're still playing them. There's still plenty of these games being made, and we're not enjoying them because they're not being thrown into our face, because most money wants you to enter an ecosystem that you can keep paying money for. And of course, like I said in the other chapters, the research is there to back up those types of video games. I'm sorry to tell you, the research is there. You're playing Pokemon Go. Get over it. But when I'm asking you what happened to them, unfortunately, you got to find them for yourselves. So go on your favorite gaming podcast, go to your favorite YouTuber, do some research online of what's the best short video game. You have to do it yourselves because most of these game companies that make shorter video games don't have the marketing value to put that game in front of you. You have to search for it yourself, and hopefully, as I close in a very dorky tone, maybe you'll just find a gem in a treasure chest, or just go find a game that you like. So, I don't know. Okay, thank you for watching the video. So again, thank you for watching this video. I just wanted to, put out another video. I'm sorry that me and Liz haven't really, put out too many videos this year. It's been busy, and I'm trying to do more in cinematic music and castor garden stuff. But we're trying to get more videos out. We have a game plan. Hopefully more than 5 videos in a year. I shouldn't make a promise, but we're gonna try to get more videos out. I started new work, I guess you can say, so I'll have more time. But you know, I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you enjoy videos like these, well, go ahead, click the subscribe button, and we have other videos just like these on the channel. Go check out our old stuff. I really like them. You know, there's end card stuff. You can check out other videos. So yeah, until the next one, thanks again. Share this video if you want. I don't care. Like the video. Also don't care. But till next time, love you. Say goodbye, Floki. Okay then.